All right, sure. So as Rachel mentioned, a female took the stand today. We were not allowed to broadcast it because she was a minor at the time. Georgia state law prohibits people from being in the courtroom when a minor is testifying about...
Not people, cameras.
Right.
People are allowed to say, yeah.
Well, it's limited to people related to the trial and reporters and court personnel when minors are testifying in Georgia state court related to sexual allegations.
Right.
So because of that, it was not totally public and not available for live streaming. But we do have some notes about what happened on the stand, and the woman, who is no longer a minor but was 16 years old, allegedly, at the time that she and Harris were supposedly engaged in an online text-based relationship, and talked about how she was a junior in high school when they first started talking. Their conversations quickly turned sexual. She did tell him how old she was and discussed school with him. He repeatedly asked her to send him pictures of her genitals. It does not seem that she did that, although they did exchange pictures where she said that she sent him pictures of her breasts and he sent her pictures of his genitals.
And also, during the testimony, these are notes we got from our reporter in the field, that she testified that Harris asked her regarding how is your school day going, seeming to indicate he knew full well that she was still in high school at the time that he was sending back these pictures back and forth. So they talked a lot about the pictures, the explicit sexual pictures that the two of them exchanged back and forth. And then also she talked about how she did exchange text messages on June 18th, 2014, which of course was the day that Cooper died. She asked him about places in Marietta, which is in Cobb County, where this happened, where they can go to eat. And after answering her, he asked her to send pictures of her private parts. Again, that was on the same day that Cooper was killed. So that's kind of a recap, and we'll get more into that with Cathy. But now I want to bring in, and that's why we have these funny earphones on right now so we can hear Cathy. Cathy, if you don't mind bringing up your mic, Cathy Russon is from Court Chatter. She runs one of the best websites for trial watching lovers. She has a whole slew of people that follow her website, and they are really interesting folks to talk to because they really closely follow these trials. And Cathy, just hearing what we discussed in terms of the testimony this morning, how do you think that plays in? What have you kind of noticed in this trial over the last couple of days, and your followers especially?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
The testimony from this morning is probably, well, not the most important, but really important to the felony counts of the sexual exploitation of child, the counts that are involved with the sexting, because he talks to her about school and tells her stay in school. So that should tell the jury that he knew she was a minor, and that goes to those counts that he's charged with.
Right. So exactly, they're showing exactly that he knew at the time, because they were answering back and forth, that she was in school. Exactly. Cathy, are you still there? I'm not hearing you here. If you turn it a bit up for us, that would be great.
Oh, okay. So.
Oh, that's much better. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Okay.
I can hear you. You don't need to touch anything. So you think that really went into the child exploitation felony counts that Justin Ross Harris is also charged with?
Right, and I'll tell you, just an overall interesting to watch this trial with other trial watchers is how opinions keep changing and going back and forth as this case is being presented. You know, for 2 years now, we had one view of what we thought the facts were in this case. and because of the probable cause hearing and because of Detective Stoddard's testimony at that probable cause hearing. And now we're seeing that things aren't exactly as they were reported 2 years ago. And it's skewing, it's changing some people's minds, not changing their others, but they don't like the fact that there has been a lot of misinformation out there for the last 2 years. This trial is fascinating from the trial watcher standpoint because I see people flip-flopping on what they think about this case.
Exactly, and I think we felt similarly too. You know, many of the comments that we were getting when the trial initially began were that, oh my, he's definitely guilty. Now we've heard more of the evidence, and Cathy, I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I thought last week when we heard from that friend from the Home Depot who went to lunch with Justin that day about the Reddit line, the child-free Reddit thread, that was pretty eye-opening in terms of what we initially thought and what ended up to be the case.
For me, that's been the biggest misinformation that's been out there so far, was the child-free site, the visits to the child-free site. How many headlines have we seen for 2 years about him visiting child-free sites? He wanted to be child-free, child-free, child-free. Now we learn that it was a buddy of his in a group Google chat they had going at work, more than just Ross in it, but others, and that buddy happened to be skimming over Reddit, saw that about a child-free website, sticks the link in this group chat and says, I guess this really exists.
Well,
and it goes up. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's very, very different than Justin Ross Harris proactively searching for living a child-free life.
Well, and even more important than that is about 2 minutes later, he posts in the group hangout grossness. So you can tell he probably went and looked at that site and then came back and his response was grossness. So this is completely the opposite of what we have been believing for 2 years about him and this child-free website.
Absolutely. You know, we thought that he was seeking this out, that this is something that he had in mind, living a child-free life, and then he sees other people talking about this, and he finds it distasteful, and he's against it, really. And
that is the only day they have him visiting that site. It was that same day that they could, the April 28th of 2014 is the same day the friend put it in there. It's the only time they have him on that site through their internet searches.
Wow. Cathy, have we heard anything, and here at lawnews.com, we've obviously been watching the trial pretty closely, but we missed some testimony here and there. Have we heard anything about this, searching of YouTube videos about how long it takes a dog to die in a car? Because I remember years ago when I covered this case in Georgia when I was a reporter there, that was another thing that came out. But so far I haven't heard anything about that either. Have you?
We have not heard that yet. Detective Stoddard testified to that in the probable cause hearing, and he has just taken a stand today. We are expecting to see Ross Harris's full police interview today, the video of that, and I think Ross talks about it in there.
Oh,
and
okay.
So I think we're going to start seeing more information about that, and I also believe that's a little misinformation that's been out there for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to see what he says. And I think, too, this afternoon's testimony, which will include the police interrogation of Justin Ross Harris, is going to be pretty critical because I think for the first time, the jurors are going to be able to see Justin Ross Harris's demeanor right after this happened. I mean, we saw some of it when he was wailing in the room, but I'll be interested to hear, for one, how he reacted when police were questioning him.
Absolutely. Between seeing his reaction on that day and if this is where he talks about these videos, this could be a make or break day for the prosecution's case.
What do you think, Cathy, in terms of this video? Have you heard anything? What do you expect to see?
This is definitely going to be what we've been waiting for. There's a couple of bombshells that I've been waiting for, but this is one of them because we've heard how others described his demeanor, right? And we also heard conflict in that testimony, that some describe his demeanor one way on the scene, some others describe it another way. One of the witnesses had to be impeached basically with her prior interview with police, because now she was acting like, oh, he wasn't acting right at all, and he didn't act like his kid. And then when she goes back and has to read what she told police, she had said back then, oh, he was upset. So we've seen all this conflicting testimony about how people perceived he was acting. So now we're going to get to see him and exactly what was happening in just I don't even think it's hours later after Cooper's pulled from that car.
And also, Cathy, just to bring that point up, that was one of the reasons about a week or two ago, all the weeks now are blending together, but the defense filed a motion for a mistrial. Do you remember that? And it had to do with the fact that one of the police officers who responded to the scene initially didn't put in his report about how he thought Justin Ross Harris was faking emotions. That was in the initial police report, but then when he testified on the stand, he basically thought Justin Ross Harris was acting fake that day.
That was Officer Gallimore, and the defense ended up being right. They wanted to admit that police report, and the state objected, saying that couldn't, and the defense brought up a statute saying they could, and over the weekend the judge decided to reverse her decision and allow that to be admitted. But that is the example of what has happened in this case, even with what we call, professional witnesses, on how over these 2 years, things are now, they're saying things a little differently than they did initially on the scene, because they believe that he's guilty, in my opinion. And that's why things are a little skewed to that side of it than they initially either reported to law enforcement, or they wrote in their reports, or they interviewed,
Oh, Cathy, for some reason, did we just lose Cathy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry about
Okay.
that. Cathy, I'm curious how your court watcher followers are reacting to this new testimony that we're hearing. Because I know a lot, especially a lot of them thought he was guilty to begin with. Are they starting to rethink how they perceive this case?
Well, some are. I will tell you, we have two separate issues here, which is why the defense tried to get it separated. We have the sexting charges with minors, and then we have the murder. And I think everyone really has him guilty on the sexting. It looks pretty clear cut and dry on that. There may be a little technicality the defense will try and argue in the law about, you can actually have sex with a 16-year-old, but you can't sext her. But I still think he's going to be guilty on that. So that's what trial watchers, and he's a total creep. And so that's what we're hearing about that part. On the murder, however, is the intent. And that is changing a little. Some are never going to change their opinion, and they're going to believe he did it. But some, because of the misinformation, I think that's giving them pause. Now, the jury's you've got to remember, the jury doesn't know misinformation. They just know what they're hearing now. In cross-exam, that will come up, especially the cross-exam of Detective Stoddard will come up of how things are reported differently today. But showing that he intentionally murdered Cooper, I think, is a hard road. However, what the people that still have him very guilty on that, their opinions are based on a couple things, and one is seeing the inside of that car and how close that car seat was to him. Right. I mean, right there. And I think that changed also a lot of views. People that were on the not guilty started coming to the guilty when they saw all the video and pictures of the inside of that car.
Again, I think you're right. When we saw that picture of the car and just saw that the car seat was inches away from the driver's seat where Justin Ross Harris was driving, definitely at least changed some minds in terms of perceiving how the situation worked. That said, is that enough to prove intent?
Well, I'll tell you, Rachel, if you judge the jurors, 12 regular citizens, off of trial watchers, who granted know a lot more, but everyone's all over the board on this. And that's why I think this could be a hung jury on those murder charges. And there's going to be a lot of discussion going on in that jury room, because there's a lot of discussion going on in the chat rooms and on Twitter about this. And people are all over the place on their opinion of intent.
One of the questions that we're getting from one of our Facebook people that are watching is, why would a 2-year-old be in a rear-facing car seat? That is a good question. Cathy, do you have any insight on that?
Well, I do have a little bit. Apparently in the other car, in the mother's car, he had a forward-facing one. So that people find that suspect. I will say, though, if you want to look at this from the defense point of view, they showed the manufacturer's recommendation for that car seat, and it's set up to 2 years old.
Okay.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Everything went very quiet. So, however, they've showed his, or at least talked about his height, and we're going to see a 3D model of Cooper inside the car seat, for lack of better description. And it's going to be a model of that, and you'll see his head clear above the car seat. That right there shows that he shouldn't have been rear facing, I believe. I wonder, they're likely to have a car seat manufacturer come in, but I don't know. I haven't heard that. So, but seeing his head that far above the top of the car seat and seeing those pictures of the inside of that car and how close Harris was with the car seat right here and Cooper's head above it, people are finding it unbelievable that he forgot he was in there.
And just to recap a little bit, this morning we also heard that this trial could last another 4 weeks because they have quite a few more witnesses to go through. So, you know, we're only about halfway then, and perhaps a lot could change. And I especially think it's going to be interesting this afternoon to see that interrogation tape when the lead detective, Detective Stoddard, is interviewing Justin Ross Harris immediately after what happened.
You know what else I'm hoping will come out is a lot of people were suspect and still are of the ex-wife Leanna, Cooper's mother, and comments she made when she came to the police station to talk to Ross. And I also believe that has never been put in context for us. That those one-liners that we've heard come out of her mouth that day, we may get a different view of that as well.
What do you think? Do you think Justin Ross Harris is going to testify? The two attorneys that we've had over the last couple of days, Beth Karras and another criminal defense attorney yesterday, believe that the defense should definitely put him on the stand. What's your take on it, Cathy?
He is so unlikable that I would be, I don't want to say shocked. I don't think they'll put him on the stand. I think right now there's enough reasonable doubt on the murder charge to at least get a hung jury. I think maybe that the courts, well, they always say they wait to make that decision until the end of the state's case, but I think really they're going to wait until it's all out there and how they feel about it. He's just not likable, so I wouldn't put him on the stand.
But I guess the attorneys we talked to this week basically said, well, everyone knows he's a slime ball already, so could they make him look any worse if he took the stand? Then at least the jurors would hear his side. Interesting take, though technically they are going to hear his side during the tape.
Right, but I tend to agree with Cathy on this one. I don't think it would be the best idea to put him on the stand because, yes, we know, or the jury may know, that he's not the best guy, but people also knew a lot of stuff going into this trial that ended up not being true.
True.
So why give them the opportunity to confirm their preconceived notions, if they have them, of Harris? Why show them that he may not be the most sympathetic figure when, as we mentioned, there's so much reasonable doubt already as far as the charges? I think the less that he has to do with the testimony, the better.
Cathy, we're getting a question in from Caleb Bernard, and you might know the answer to this because I believe that the jury should get to see the car with the car seat in real life and be able to get in the car for themselves. I know there were some plans to allow the jury to do that. Do you know if they're going to do that?
Before, in pretrial hearings, the judge ruled the car could be moved to Brunswick.
So or is it perhaps they'll take the court out of court for a day and take the jury over to the car and give them a real life example?
I think so, but and Ron could speak to this too. I don't believe the jurors will be allowed to get in the car.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Georgia does with those situations. As far as getting into the car, that seems a little bit questionable. But
that's like doing your own kind of demonstrate or your own experiment, right?
Yeah. But in terms of going out and taking a trip to just see it. I mean, those sorts of things happen, so
Yeah.
that could very well
That
be the
could happen.
case.
Well, and even if they don't get in it, they'll definitely be able to get a kind of a better feel of how close that car seat was to the front seat, to where Justin Ross Harris was. Well, if you're just joining us, I want to thank you so much. We're live streaming from lawnews.com. We've been live streaming the Justin Ross Harris trial out of Brunswick, Georgia, and we have a very special guest on with us today, Cathy, who has a great website called courtchatter.com. She live streams trials as well, and we really thank her for coming on and giving her insight. It's always interesting to see what you think and what some of your court chatters think, because they are experts in watching these cases and I think have a pretty good sense a lot of times what might happen, though they do tend to skew more towards convicting these folks sometimes.
No, that's absolutely correct. You know, I would say if you want to call a trial watcher, however you want to call them, tend to be prosecution based. But, you know, we've got some really smart people that have been watching court cases for a long time, and they really want the state to prove the case to them. So,
and I wrote up a special on lawnews.com about Cathy's website, and believe it or not, Cathy's not an attorney, but if you heard her speaking for the last couple of minutes that we were live, you'd probably think she was, because as I said, she knows a lot more about criminal trials than a lot of attorneys do, for sure. So we really thank you for joining us, and we're going to take a break, and of course we'll start live streaming the trial when it picks back up this afternoon. It's going to be a critical day today, because we're expected to see the police interrogation tape from the day Justin Ross Harris found his child dead in his car. So stay with us.